Hello, my name is Rochelle Robinson. I have the privilege to serve as mayor in the city of Douglasville. And this is March, so we're going to talk to some wonderful women in the community. I have three ladies in the community, and we're going to start with the cherry on top, Mrs. Dot Padgett, to talk about women for Women's History Month. And we're just going to have a conversation. So I'm so excited to welcome and introduce to some, but all of us in Douglasville. I'll just say in the state of Georgia and all over, everyone knows Miss Dot Padgett. So, Miss Padgett, I just want to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming today. And I wanted for you just to tell people about yourself a little bit. First of all, look at her hair. It's always coiffed so perfectly. She looks beautiful all the time. I don't understand. I just don't. It's such a blessing to be with you. Thank you.
Well, it's just great to wake up every morning, put 2 feet on the floor, and able to start the day, Rochelle. Thank you so much.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
We're on a first-name basis. You know
Yes,
that.
ma'am.
We
Yes,
always
ma'am.
have been, Dot and Rochelle.
Well, who does
so.
your hair?
Oh, can I actually tell you?
Yes,
All
I
right.
love
Well,
your
she
hair.
serves on your preservation. It's Elaine.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
she does a good job. She
Yes,
really
she
does.
does.
And someone asked me if blondes have more fun. And I told them I was never a slouch having a good time as a brunette. So, but
Oh, that's cute. And I'm
I-
doing a little bit of blonde because, I'm trying to
Yeah, you
camouflage the gray.
I have plenty of gray up there. So
You do?
Yeah, so that's
It's
a
a
lot
lot
of
of
gray.
wisdom.
Well, I've probably earned every one of those.
Yes,
gray
ma'am.
hairs,
Yes,
but,
ma'am. And she does Councilman Adams' hair as well. And he has
she
the
does-
best hair.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
So it's something about
Good.
her hands, I think.
It
because
is
your hair
absolutely
stays so thick.
The moment she puts her hands in your head, you think, ooh, she understands. She understands hair. But we just attended the Chamber of Commerce luncheon today
Yes,
with
ma'am.
2 great speakers.
Yes, ma'am.
And I was thinking that if Rochelle asked me about what women do in business,
Yes.
I come from an era of, they said the happiest woman was a woman that lived in a house with a picket fence. She had 4 children, and she had a husband that came home from work every day, and she greeted him at the door. That was fine.
Yes,
That was
ma'am.
fine. But I think we've made a lot of progress in, and I learned, when I listened to them today, I thought, if what I had planned to tell you,
Yes,
is
ma'am.
it still timeless? And I believe that it is. Because one of the things, if someone asked me how it went so easily into being a woman homeowner and a homeowner, a
Yes.
housekeeper, and I found that being a volunteer, and that is timeless. And if you work as a volunteer, you get to meet the leaders. I mean, you
That's
have
right.
you have no problem with going right to the top of the business, of
Yes,
any
ma'am.
business, and you have no problem with asking for something. And so I thought, well, is that still appropriate? Is that still something that, and then immediately after the meeting, someone came in and they were talking about volunteer work.
Yes.
So I am happy to announce that that's still a very valuable part of what you might be able to do. But young women now, they prepare themselves really early. And at my age, in my time, we didn't have an opportunity to prepare ourselves for going into the workforce.
Right.
And we were sort of, like they mentioned today, we were sort of the invisible person in the room. And we had to learn to say, if someone interrupted us in the middle of a conversation in something that we thought was important, we'd have to sort of reach over and say, I'm not invisible.
Wow.
And, those things work. One of the things that I think that worked also was if you have a little humor.
Yes.
I know in the early 80s I was working on a campaign, and it was kind of late one evening. Do you mind if I tell a story?
Please do. I love
Okay.
this. We're just having a conversation. This is beautiful.
I was helping to raise some money for a man running for governor, and it was a little late in the evening, and a young man came bouncing in the office, and a little bit, one of the other guys came on, and he said, Dot, I want you to meet, and he told me the name of this young man, and we sat and talked for just a few minutes, and I was actually on the phone asking for some sizable campaign funds, and he said, oh, how about getting me a cup of coffee?
Ooh.
And I said, usually I would have, but something about the way it was asked. And I looked at him and I said, we have a problem. And he thought, oh, we don't have a coffee machine. Y'all don't have it's broken or something. So he looked up at me and I said, I am not programmed for getting coffee.
No, you didn't. You said it like a computer.
Correct, correct. So that was what did it, you know. It was because I sort of turned it into something.
Yeah, humorous.
He said, yes, ma'am. Do you know, to this day, I know who he is. When he ran for, he's from Douglas, Georgia. When he ran for office, I sent him some money. We stayed in contact. It was only because of the way that you approach something.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I remember that, and I try to pass that on to a lesson that, you know, there are a lot of different ways.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's what Nadia at the Georgia Power, Greystone Power.
Greystone.
She used to be with Georgia Power.
Yeah.
Now she's at Greystone. But she said that today.
Correct.
And they were talking about how to approach people and what you say to them and how they treat you. You come in the room. She said, if you come in the room taking notes, they'll always have you take the notes.
Taking notes.
Yes,
I
so
thought
it's
that
the
was
way you.
Wonderful.
Yes,
my
ma'am.
daughter taught me that, and I worked to try to get the ERA passed, and that didn't work. But it was not a total disaster because young women, my daughter's age, went on and they bypassed that. And because they didn't see that as a possibility.
Right.
And they bypassed that. But, yeah, she was the one that, beware of taking notes.
Taking notes. But the way you talked to him when you said you're not wired that way, you know, you made it humorous, but you were able to still have a relationship.
Correct.
But you really put it out there so that he would respect you.
And
not demand to talk to you in a way like, go fetch me some coffee.
Go get me some coffee.
Excuse you, go get your own coffee.
I mean,
but the way you ask, it wouldn't have been a problem if he had asked in a way that was not demeaning.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Well, there are a lot of stories like that. You know,
I know. Do you mind telling us, I don't want to say the exact age. Do you tell your age?
My age?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, it's a myth.
It's a myth?
It's a myth that I was born in 1927.
It's a myth. Well, I'm going to interview centurions. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Miss Buster, I don't remember her first, but anyway, I'm interviewing her. I'm interviewing 2 centurions this week.
Wow.
So
I hadn't quite reached that.
You haven't gotten,
yet.
you're the baby of the bunch. You still have your baby doll smell at Christmas time when you get your new baby doll. So
I don't know about that. Well, a friend of mine called about a year or so ago. I happen to be friends with Rosalind Carter.
Yes, ma'am.
And she said, Dot, we have another walker that we're not using. And I thought of you. Do you need a walker? And I thanked her, and I hung up the phone, and I thought, you know, I didn't want to tell Rosalind I was still driving 80 miles an hour in the fast lane.
She said 80 miles, and that's how you live your life. You are driving 80 miles an hour in the fast lane.
The police in Villa Rica will allow it. I don't know about the ones in Douglasville.
I mean...
But...
Miss Padgett, you are funny. But you're driving 80 miles an hour in the fast lane every day, not just
every day
physically, but in your life.
Well, you know, that is one of the things, diversity. Today, Chamber of Commerce, then this interview with the mayor of the city of Douglasville, which I'm very honored to be here.
Yes, ma'am.
And tonight I will be going to an awards dinner an awards program for my 9-year-old great-granddaughter.
Wow.
Will be getting an award for writing a story.
Oh,
And the story
she's writing a story. Is she like her great grandma? Because
I
her
don't
great
know.
grandma's an author.
Well, she's writing a story, and the name of her story is The Journey of a Chicken. So then,
Where did she get this journey? Do they have chickens at
yes,
their house?
they have chickens.
They have chickens.
They have chickens,
So
yeah.
they don't have to worry about the eggs that are like
Correct.
astronomical.
And I understand now in the city of Douglasville you can have chickens. Is that correct?
We're looking at that to see if we can have chickens.
Okay.
They keep bringing it before the council.
Yes.
Some members say yes, some members say no. But we have to understand chickens are not roosters.
It's correct.
They're not going to make a lot of noise, are they?
They have to. You'll have one rooster. They're
They
not
have
going to
one
make a lot of
rooster.
noise.
Is he going to crow? I mean, like do something every morning?
Who would mind having a chicken crow or rooster?
What in the
crow?
world in the city?
Love 'em.
You love them.
Yeah. No, there are some major. How did we get off on this?
That's okay. We
This
can
is
talk
Women's
about this.
History Month.
It's what we can talk about. Well, my grandmother had a farm, so we can say that. She was
Yeah.
from Mississippi. My mom's from Mississippi.
Yeah.
They moved to Ohio. So I would see the chickens, cows. We had a well, horses. But the thing about the chickens that scared me, they would just be running around like puppies or something. But then when it was time to cook them, my grandpa wrung the neck of the chicken, and chicken was still running around the house
Oh, nice.
for a little bit, for a minute. I
yeah.
said, what's wrong with the chicken? Why is he
Yeah.
running like that? But anyway, so that's part of women's history, too. That's part of my women's
Well, some
history.
major. Now, I understand though that you have to keep them in a coop.
Yes.
You don't have them out running loose.
Yeah.
And they have to be in a. They can't be something that can fly out and. So you might think about having
Yeah,
chickens.
We'll
And-
see it. They've brought
but
it a couple of
the
times.
thing about it is, Rochelle, a chicken is alive.
Right.
And if you've ever held a little tiny.
Little chick.
This is the last thing I'm going to say on this subject. Let's talk about trees and
Yes,
other
ma'am.
things. Okay. But the history of Douglasville and women, you want to, if you can think of a question to ask me, perhaps
Yes,
I
ma'am.
can
But
answer it.
so you were going to say about the chicken in your hand. If
Yeah,
you held
a
it, they're
tiny
precious.
little chicken.
Yeah, little chick.
I just picked up one at the FFA chapter that you were there the other day for our chestnut tree
Yes,
planting.
ma'am.
And they have chickens now, little
Yeah.
tiny,
Oh, they do at
out of an
Alexander?
incubator.
Oh,
It's an incubator. That,
okay. I'm going to think about the chickens when they bring them back again.
Okay.
See, we'll have chickens in
okay.
the city.
Well, you'll probably want to really do some research on it and
Yes.
find out about it. But there are some cities I understand that are doing that.
I know it'll save some money at the grocery store with eggs.
Oh yes, you can do that.
I know. So, okay, so we're going to ask some questions. So talk to us about how did you get involved in politics? Because you have written a book for our president that we're praying for, former President, Mr. Jimmy Carter,
you
that
so
we're
much,
praying
yeah.
for now. But you work with the Pre-Nut Brigade. You lived at the White House. Who does that? Who does that except for you? Who else do I know? I don't know anyone else. I did meet a lady that when I was with Dr. Lowry, and she knows you, and she said you all work together, I think, in protocol. And I should have known because she had gloves on, and she was so proper. And she said, tell Dot I said hello. We work together at the White House. I said, who's this lady? But who else worked? I mean, how did you get there?
Okay, the first person that I actually probably did, well, I ran for PTA president. I was PTA president for 3 years. That gives you a good,
Yes.
good start.
Yes, ma'am.
Jimmy, I was working in my front yard one day, and I thought, what will I tell my grandchildren I ever did with my life? I pull weeds all day long. And that was when Jimmy Carter was running for governor.
Yes, ma'am.
And he drove up, walked in my yard, and he asked me if I would volunteer.
Wow.
And I told him something about him that immediately I said yes. And I worked with Rosalind. Now, Rosalind Carter was a very unusual person. She was shy, very shy, but her mind was such that, like Jimmy, even you might know a lot of pretty phrases to describe what you do, what you want to do. But if you don't have an understanding of how to get from point A to point B, then you're not going to be doing a good job.
All right.
And so I listened this morning to the young women,
Yes, ma'am.
and I thought, you know, they know how to get from point A to point B, and they know what it takes to do a good job and make something work.
Right.
And Rosalind, with her living in a small town and growing up in a small town, she understood that. She had a very quick mind, very sharp mind, but she was very unusual how she could be very persuasive too. But Jimmy, anyway, I worked for Jimmy as governor, but when he ran for president, we ran under the federal election laws.
Okay.
And we were allowed $31 million. Now that's pocket change.
That's
right
what
here.
it says. Elected president
with
for pocket change and peanuts.
Correct. That is pocket change of what's spent now these days, which is obscene. You know, it's tied to too much money. It gives people jobs. That's the only thing I can think about it. But with $31 million, and he was an absolute unknown. And he ran against some very well-known senators, congressmen, people that were in the news. And so how does this man, how do you set him apart from these other people? And so a bunch of Georgians started knocking on doors. And when they found out you actually knew this man personally, and they could ask you questions, and it eventually became known as the Peanut Brigade. So I was, I guess, recruited and organized that. And that brings up another thing that I wanted to suggest, that to be successful is that the things that I think you have to do is you have to definitely be organized.
Yes.
And you have to stay focused. And those two things are, especially at my age now, I have to stay focused. I'm thinking, okay, you're driving a Volkswagen.
Oh my goodness. You don't have a driver?
Do I have a driver?
Yes.
No, indeed, I don't have a driver. No.
And you okay.
You know, I can go to the Carter Center now and come home without even changing lanes almost. So
because it's an automatic thing. You know how to get
well,
there.
I stay focused.
You stay focused.
Yeah. I'm careful where I drive now, though.
You're organized and you stay focused.
Yeah. Well, don't you find that?
Oh, definitely. My kids laugh at me. They say I have OCD.
Yeah.
But it really isn't that. I'm just very meticulous.
Correct.
And
yeah.
I stay focused, but I have to be organized. I mean,
Correct.
the house, I'm not bragging, but just because I've grown up that way, my dad was in the military,
Yeah.
I was in the military, you can come any day and it's not a wreck, you know, because I have a schedule that I do certain things. I make certain that
There's a
everything's
place
in
for
its place.
everything,
Yes, ma'am.
and everything in its place.
That's right. So,
Well, my husband told somebody one time that I did a lot of volunteer work and I had to organize, and more recently the chestnut tree.
Yes.
And he said, you know, he said Dot would go to hell if they let her organize it.
That's funny, Mr. Padgett. That's
But
funny.
I think I find no problem with that.
As you say, I have no problem. Okay, how did you get to the White House? So you talked about the governor's race and raising money,
Yeah.
and then you volunteered.
I volunteered.
And you were starting in PTA. I was in PTA too.
The Peanut Brigade, of course, was during the presidential race. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
And
$31 million was that's what you had to
$31
raise?
million, that was
The max?
that was it. But now
Okay.
you could work with early on, these people that traveled all over the country could pay their own expenses.
Oh, I see.
But they could not after a certain time. But there were other parties, people, and other people that we had more money than that. We had access to more.
Okay.
And I don't want to leave here people thinking they only had $31 million. That's, you know, that wouldn't make any sense at all. But we had access, but the campaign itself had a budget of $31 million.
I understand.
And but it was that volunteer effort.
Yes.
And I guess the genius of Jimmy Carter. And that's the reason I've written a book, because he is quite an unusual man, an extraordinary man. And the way that I got to the White House, protocol dealt with, we have the three branches of government, and the protocol dealt with the White House and with the legislative. And so far, they didn't put me in court. So,
so you're executive, legislative,
correct,
judicial.
executive and legislative. So I thought, well, now that sounds like something I could do. And I worked with it and met some wonderful people.
So you stayed there the entire time? Did you
No,
live in D.C.?
I left and started raising money for the 1980 campaign.
Okay.
It was time to come home.
Yes.
I was a little worn out, too.
You were a little worn out. Did you live in Washington?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Lived in Washington.
Did the kids go with you?
I had a daughter that went with me.
Okay.
I had a son that interned one summer.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
so, no, but my daughter lived with me, and she actually ended up being a federal judge.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, so, yeah.
Oh, that's fabulous. And so, Mr. Padgett, I'm not going to say he let you go. He gave you the blessing to go. And did Mr. Bennett help your brother? Did he help with the family?
He did.
Yes.
He was great. I think
Did he let
I
you
think
go?
that's unusual for you to say "let me go," because somebody did say that to me. When it was nice of Dave to let you go, and I just looked at them, and they said, "Oh, I've said the wrong thing." Haven't
Exactly. Exactly. Like my husband doesn't let me run for mayor. He doesn't let me do anything. We have a discussion.
Yeah.
And he supports.
Well, thank goodness.
Yes,
Dave
yes,
did.
he does. He's very supportive.
Dave was very supportive, and it's unusual for me to speak to the young women, though, because they start out with a career. Mine, if I had a career, it was very late in life, but thank goodness that nobody told me I couldn't do this.
Right.
And I think that's part of it. And one of the young women this morning mentioned confidence. And I believe that if your family, your husband, your mother, your father, if they instill that in you,
Yes.
and as young parents,
Yes.
don't be negative with your children and instill confidence in them.
Yes.
And of course, everybody doesn't have the same makeup,
Right.
and so I think it's interesting to watch people develop.
And if you and what they can do if you give them some encouragement.
Correct.
Yes.
When I was 15 years old, I was a soda jerk at what is the
What's a soda
red-
jerk?
oh, that's too complicated. It has to do
It
with
is.
Coca-Cola being in a tank on the counter at a drugstore.
Oh, so you just you would pour the
You
soda.
would jerk that
Like Happy
little handle
Days.
down, and the Coca-Cola formula would come out, the syrup. And
Really?
see, you've learned something today.
I didn't know that.
A soda jerk, ladies and gentlemen, is you can look it up in the annals of the Coca-Cola.
And I was just at Coca-Cola Company.
It makes
Maybe-
sense, like everything
It
makes
does.
sense.
A soda jerk. Anyway, I'm sorry. I couldn't help but jump in there because I didn't know what that was. So you were saying
But
you
when
were
I
a
was
soda
at the
jerk.
drugstore,
15.
people would come and sit at the counter. It was a very popular spot. So I met the judges, I met the clerks of courts, I met the police chief, I met, there were several women that would come in, and they were mothers, and they worked at home. But some of the things that they said to me, and I was 15, I think developed
Yes.
some of the ways that I am now.
Yes.
And I can hear somebody saying, "Oh, what?"
No, but you had the wisdom to listen and to apply it to your life. So I think that's something now, not that young people don't listen. I have a 20-year-old, 22, and Joe will be 24 next week.
Okay, at least they're all an
So-
even age.
Yes, ma'am. They're all even age. So, but my husband and I were talking about this. Where is the balance in education and career
Correct.
and trying to have a family? Just like one of the ladies said today at our chamber banquet that worked for Cox Company, that in her 30s she had to balance having a family and building herself as a leader. So that's something that young people, like my husband said, the girls were home for spring break and we were taking turns cooking because I want them to be able to cook.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Joel moved out. So he lives with 2 other firefighters because he's a firefighter now.
Okay, yeah.
So he'll call home periodically or text me, really text. Mom, how do you do fried chicken?
Yeah.
Mom, so and so and so. But I had them cooking growing up because really when the girls graduate from college or go to grad school or get married, no one wants you. You can be a high-powered woman, but you don't want to eat out every night.
No.
So you need to learn or you need to know how to do something. So my husband said, do you have a cookbook for them? He said, when they get married, are you going to hand them a cookbook? I said, actually, I have recipes from my mom,
Correct.
my grandmother,
Correct.
and I pulled out a paper for him. I said, isn't this your mother's writing? He said, where'd you get that from? I said, 27 years ago when we got married and we went to your mother's house and she had some yeast rolls. I said, Mom, would you write down the yeast roll recipe?
Oh, wow.
So
now that
I'm gonna-
that is the epitome of good cooking.
So
If
I'm
you
going to
can
have
do a
it
yeast
all
roll.
together. I know yeast roll. They're hard
Yeah,
to do.
yeah.
But I'm going to compile all of those recipes and make a copy and maybe, have them bound or something and
Yeah.
give them to my girls for when they get married. Because right now, Olivia, when they were home for spring break, she made some waffles. She thought she was doing something. But it's in the waffle machine. So she went in the cabinet, got the waffle mix, put some
Yeah.
water in there
Yeah.
and an egg. I'm not going to talk about it, but it was kind of simple. I was happy that she did it. But
Well, graduate her to a pound cake
Oh.
and see if she can do that.
Ooh, we watched the Great American Baking Show, British Baking Show.
Oh,
That's
isn't that amazing?
I love that show.
Oh, that's a great show.
I love that show. So we sit there like, oh, okay, I'm going to make that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but pound cake, baking is chemistry.
Well,
And timing.
now, cooking is, they've made it an art
Yes.
form.
Yes.
Did I say?
Yes,
and
yeah, art form.
and it's beginning to be big business too.
Mm-hmm.
But you get everybody sort of cooking together. I have she started cooking when she was about 10, one of my great grandchildren. And she cooks, but somebody else has to clean up the kitchen.
Right.
But at least
I don't want,
she
I'll just
won't
go
be
ahead and
like
cook.
my daughter called me one day. She said, Mama, how long do you boil a 5-minute egg? Now
Is she
that's-
the judge?
No, yeah.
Well, see, she's a judge. She didn't have time to worry about boiling the egg, no.
She was studying those books. But
Oh, that's sweet. Yes,
anyway,
ma'am.
well, I
So
think-
you enjoyed your time at the White House. Volunteerism is very important.
Correct.
As you were saying. And my mother did that as well. She stayed home with us until we were in high school. Then she started working a part-time job. Then she went back to college. But she always volunteered. And so I grew up in a home of volunteerism in the
Correct.
community. Then she was in PTA. She was
Yes.
at the church. She was always doing something. So really that's how I came into Douglasville, helping and volunteering. And my mother said that. She said every community that you go into, you should give back. That's how you learned people in the community, is by getting involved and just giving of your time. So that was kind of how I got in politics.
I'm glad to know that, because this morning I thought, now, is that gone by? People don't do that anymore. So I was happy to hear. That.
Yes,
that it
ma'am.
was part of it anyway. So that makes me feel
It
really
is.
good.
Yes, but it's a foundation, I think. It helps with leadership. As you've said, it helps with everything.
Yeah, well, you'll go. You have no problem with just going right to the top of a company and asking for something.
Because
But-
you're used to doing it when you have to volunteer.
Correct, yeah. Also, you have to know what you're asking for.
Yes.
Also. But Rochelle, thank you, and you do a great job to represent this
Oh,
city.
thank you.
Read the articles. I look at when I see something.
Thank
And
you.
so,
Thank you for your support. Now talk to us about a couple of hobbies, and then I'll let you go. So I want you to talk about the chestnut tree and just give us a little bit of information about that. But I'm going to tell you something. I remember your house on Price. Vince Dooley came
Yes, he was
Yes,
there.
he was there, but I was in Rotary Club, and we
Yeah.
were doing something with some hydrangeas. And doesn't he have a
It was during
hydrangea?
the hydrangea festival.
It was during the hydrangea
And
festival.
they had a party. There's a hydrangea, the
Named
Vince
for
Stula
him.
hydrangea, and they were lucky to get him. And they came and had the party on my front lawn.
Yes,
Isn't
yes.
that funny? You've been to my house a lot of times.
Yes,
I
ma'am, I
remember the
have.
first time you were there. And you had one of the children. It was just almost a tiny baby then.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was the first time I ever knew Rochelle. And then I can tell you about going to your house when your baby was born.
Yes,
and I don't
ma'am,
remember
you
which
did.
one. And I took a little gift.
You did.
And here I knocked on the door, and you came to me beautifully dressed in a wonderful
Oh.
a robe of some sort. And I thought, oh my God, how does she do it? You used to bring the baby to the council meetings.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So, if you feel like something has to be done, do it. And just go ahead. If that's how you think that's the way you can get it done.
Thank you
That's
for those
good.
nuggets of
So-
wisdom. I'm going to say this about you, too. I think you do this for everyone. I'm going to try not to
Oh,
cry.
we didn't get back to the chestnut tree.
Yes,
so-
we're going to get to the chestnut tree in a second.
Yeah.
I don't want to cry. I just want to say this. You are such an inspiration to people. And you're kind of like the mother. You're like a matriarch for the community. Everyone that knows anything about Douglasville, they know about you. And so when we came to your house for, I think it was maybe a Christmas parade, or we're looking
It
at
was
homes.
I believe
doing
it was a Christmas tour. I think
Christmas
so.
tour.
Yeah.
There was something in the paper, a picture of us staring at some
Pictures, yeah.
pictures, and you sent that to me in the mail. And then, you would just periodically send stuff to people in the mail. You send me stuff in the mail. Then one time, my son was in honors band, and he was playing, and he was first chair at Chapel Hill Middle School. And I know you're writing because it's so neat. The penmanship is excellent. So, sometimes they don't teach kids how to do cursive these days. So
Yeah. No, they don't know how. They understand. They understand. Wait a minute, printing, but they don't understand writing.
Yeah. So how you gonna sign a check? They don't sign checks. They use Zelle.
Correct.
So anyway,
Things have changed.
so I knew when it came in the mail. I said, "Why is Miss Padgett sending me?" I said, "Why Miss Dot sending me?" And it was a beautiful picture that you had taken the time out, looking at the paper, and cut it out and said, "Joel's doing a good job."
Hey, that's great.
I said, "Oh my gosh!" So thank you for doing that. You're kind of like the mother, the grandmother to people in the community. I wasn't elected at the time. I had served on city council. I was kind of helping my husband with the church, and it wasn't like you were trying. You don't do things to try to get, because you're already there. You're not,
Oh my!
you're
I
not
don't
trying
know.
to do things for a favor. You're doing it out of the kindness of your heart.
Well,
And that's
one of the
beautiful.
things that if you could do that is I think that's important, and that's bringing people together. Connecting people.
Yes, ma'am.
And if I do give myself credit for anything, that's what I would like to do, is for connecting people. And when someone, there's a young woman that walked up to us today, that's her first day at the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
Well, I'll try to remember her
Yes.
and be sure that she gets connected and meets some other people. But anyway,
let's
Rochelle
talk about the
mentioned my
chestnut.
chestnut tree. You will have to go and Google the history of the American chestnut tree. But I'm probably one of the few people living now that has seen the destruction, a third of our forests that were absolutely destroyed in the 1900s. Flying one day from New York back to Atlanta, I looked down and I could see just brown all the way down, and it was the chestnut trees that had been, American chestnut trees that had been killed. And so they have a 30 or 40 year now experiment to find the perfect tree. So by the year 2025, we're going to have that perfect chestnut tree, the American chestnut tree to plant in Douglasville.
Praise
For
God.
the
Beautiful.
to remember skint chestnut.
And
Correct.
why is that important? I know why it's important, but I want you to tell people why is it important in Douglasville, Douglas County. It's on the Douglasville seal. But why is the chestnut tree, the American skint chestnut tree?
Well, the chestnut tree, by every metric, is the most valuable tree we've ever had, the American chestnut tree. And it's rot resistant. I learned something the other day, even the leaves that fall off if they happen to land in a stream, the fish will eat the leaves and get nutrients from it. I thought that when they landed on the ground, there was fertilizer in the leaf of a chestnut tree. And of course, the chestnuts, but in the early pioneer days, the chestnuts were very, very valuable.
Wow.
And now we would probably eat them
Yes.
like you would any of the other nuts. But it has been over the years. There's never been a tree that has quite reached the pinnacle that the chestnut tree. Now we have Chinese chestnut trees in this country. But the reason that I think it's so important is Douglasville is that was the skint chestnut tree an American chestnut?
Wow.
That would be, you can
Yes.
have a puzzle, you can have a question, you can have a contest.
Exactly, we could.
You can have a contest.
But the seal, I don't have it on today, but it has
Has a tree,
the tree
yeah.
on there. And they
And
said
by
the
the
Native
way,
Americans.
I want to thank you. We had a young man that had written a poem about the chestnut tree.
Yes, ma'am.
And he was very nervous when he read it in public the other day. And you were in the audience, and you stood up and applauded him.
Yes.
And I spoke to that young man the other day. I think that has been the highlight of his life.
Oh my God.
I really do, because
really?
To have the mayor of the city stand up and get the crowd to stand up with you. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. I could feel his nervousness.
Yes.
But the poem was absolutely, he got into a part of his brain in his heart and expressed it on that piece of
Correct.
paper.
Yeah.
And it was so appropriate.
Well, we are using that poem, and it will be put in the museum. It'll also be sent to the national headquarters.
Oh my
And so,
goodness,
anyway,
congratulations.
correct,
But
okay.
it was my pleasure. I love young people and try to encourage them, as I know you do. One time we went to your house, Olivia was probably 8 or 7 or something, and she was walking around. My sister was here from Ohio.
Yeah, that was on the tour. Yes.
Yeah, and so she
I
was
almost
like-
remember what you were wearing that night.
Oh, see, come
I'm
on
gonna
now.
get back to this book.
Yes, ma'am. Please talk to us
this
about a book.
book,
How many years did it take you to write this? I saw so many, so many iterations of how many, pages you had. It was
Yeah.
boxes.
Well,
Oh, my
it took
goodness.
correct.
Yes.
It took me 15 years to do the research and write it. But at a meeting, Jimmy Carter told a story on me. He said that it took her 25 years, and he said the reason I know that she bothered me with all these questions. It did not really take me.
Oh,
It only took me.
goodness.
But I will tell you that I was 89 years old when it was published. So if that gives anybody an encouragement to and it was published by Mercer University.
Yes, ma'am.
And of course, we have our own Mercer University right here in Douglas County. So
Wonderful. And I went to your birthday party. I'm not going to say if it was like 95 but we went to the birthday party.
95, yeah. Thank you for being there.
Yes, ma'am. It was wonderful.
She's talking to my 95th birthday, and I don't mind telling
Yes,
that.
it's a beautiful
I'm just glad
thing.
I'm here.
I know that's right. And
Yeah.
you in your right mind, you're walking around. You don't need someone's walker.
No. I still try to walk around in high heels when I can, but I've had to give those up.
Ooh-wee.
But it was at the museum, which
Yes.
hopefully it raised some money, and it did. It
Yes,
raised some money, and but the thing that I wanted it to do was to raise some attention and focus some attention on the museum,
Yes, ma'am.
and because it's a valuable asset to
Yes,
our
ma'am.
county,
It is.
and as well as the other things that we have here.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing what we have here in the county and in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And when they talk about it, I said, "You have the American Red Cross." What other things do we have?
Microsoft, Google.
Google.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
it's wonderful. So, okay, it's Women's History Month, and we're going to end. And what do you want to say to women about, okay, tell me a woman who's a hero to you, a shero. Maybe it's Mrs. Rosalind Carter or something, I don't know. And then like the 9-year-old, is it a boy or girl?
It's a little girl.
It's a girl.
Yeah.
So in your family, like, what do you want to say? What do you want to be remembered for? Man, I don't know. It's too much. You're like a national treasure. So I don't know what to say.
Oh,
so
I don't know. To my
woman?
children, I would like to be remembered for introducing them to something new just about every day.
Are you
Or
serious?
either if they are, well, bless her heart, the first great-grandchild, I drug her to tennis. I made her do that. I did this. I did that. And I said, take them to a museum. Let them learn something new every day, even if it's just, oh, and I do want to tell you this. I have good karma for parking, particularly.
You do?
I do. I can find a parking place. But the reason I do it is because I do a random act of kindness every day. I try to do a random act of kindness.
Really?
It might not be anything except saying good morning to somebody that's waiting in line and they look like they're stressed out or something. And but if you just do that, you'll get good parking places.
So you're like Starbucks. You pay in advance.
Correct.
You pay forward.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
because you sow good things, you're going to reap a harvest.
Well,
you sow good seeds, you're going to God's gonna
well,
bless you.
you know, I don't do a random act of kindness to get paid back.
Oh, I know you don't. It's
And,
your heart.
but
Just
it
like
does
you send
work.
me like you send me a picture of my son in the paper. You didn't have to do that. You'll just send something every now and again. Rochelle, you're doing a good job.
Yeah,
Do
well,
something. It's great.
I have a habit of doing that. It kind of, I like to do that.
Well, I'm going to continue I do it a little bit, but I'm going to do it more because I need parking spaces. So I need to do something to get these parking spaces.
Don't worry about that.
Yes, ma'am. And so who's your shero? We'll end with that. Who are you?
You know, that would be hard for me to even say. And of course, what comes to your mind a lot of time is your mom,
Yes.
your mother.
Yes.
And I think my good health comes from her. My immune system comes from her.
Wow.
But those unnamed people, women, that would sit in the drugstore and talk to me when I was 15 years old, that was probably the start of it. And of course, you named Rosalind Carter. I admire Rosalind a great deal. And when I get home, I will say, why didn't you mention certain person? But
Oh, no.
you sort of caught me a little bit by surprise. But I'm not going to mention this because there's so many in our
Yes, ma'am.
in our community, and so many people that we have that women in leadership roles. Some of the ones that in the past that have gone by us a long time. You should have asked me and prepared me for this.
Okay, I apologize.
I'll write you a letter.
Yes, ma'am. I'm getting spanked. But I do know people look up to you. So if you ask other people like Alana Hudson or some other people, they'll say, oh, Miss Dot. You know, we judged a dance contest together, and you stole the show. You were throwing socks at people. It was like Dancing with the Stars. And people said, I said, I could not keep up with her. I just sat there. I felt like Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, and I was the, you know.
Oh, right. Well, you were serious and you were nice. You were serious and you were nice.
Great, no, that was funny.
Yeah, but I thought, well, you know, we've got to put a little humor in this. So I did, I threw the socks for Sam Davis.
You did.
And I told him to knock the socks off of me. So anyway, I'm going to mention one person that I don't know that a lot of people remember the name Helen Keller, the young woman, you know, was deaf and what she was able to accomplish through in her life, and the way that she persisted,
Yes.
and correct, and what she was able to accomplish. Eleanor Roosevelt, I'm going so far back. And they're all women in today's world. But there's so many of them that I hesitate to pick one out.
Yes, ma'am.
But, of course, Eleanor Roosevelt for her human rights. And she was just, grew up in luxury, but she had, that I believe is one of the most difficult things for someone to do, is to grow up in a privileged household and still have an understanding of what it is for that young woman that has to get up every morning, have no money, and go to a job that she doesn't particularly get any pleasure out of, and for her to be able to do that. But I think people that can understand that type of person. So thank you so much. Are we ending this? I know.
Yes, ma'am. We're ending. Is there anything you want to say? I thank you so much for your time, for taking time. This has been really a long day for you. And you got stuff to do this evening. I still have things to do. Yeah.
Well, number one, of course, I've lived here in Douglas County since 1941, and I've seen so many of the changes.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm really grateful for the changes. The fact that it was a drugstore.
I know.
And now they have that red velvet waffle. And the fact that we have a museum.
Yes.
And just I can't begin to name.
The amphitheater's coming.
The amphitheaters, the theater. And I do wish that we had perhaps a more of a, we have the Arts Council, but I wish that we had a facility
I know.
For that. Yeah, and maybe that'll be something that we can work towards.
Yes, ma'am.
But
did you go to, did you go when I thought you went when he got the Nobel Peace Prize.
For the what?
Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh, I had my ticket to go for that, and my husband had just had surgery.
Okay.
So he asked me not to go and leave him.
Oh.
So that was one time when I let my instincts overrule something else, and I stayed at home and had no problem with that.
You put your wife hat on.
Correct. Yeah, but I've read about it, and every time, it brings you a little bit closer to any type of Nobel Peace Prize. If you know a friend of mine that has written a book about Jimmy, and he actually used some of my material, was a Pulitzer Prize winner.
Oh, wow.
And those things, when you have those brought that close to you, then it makes you understand so much.
Yeah, remarkable person.
Rochelle, you have really made me ramble today.
So
I hope we can take one thing out of this.
Oh, this is wonderful. It's a conversation. This is good.
Be organized, be focused, have confidence, and volunteer, and just keep some friends very close to you.
Yes, ma'am.
And
and wear some Doncaster and get your hair done by Missy Lynn.
Wouldn't she love that?
Yes,
all
ma'am.
Right, I'll tell you.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
Anyway,
well, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you, and I don't know what else to say except for we just appreciate you. I appreciate you. I love you. I thank you for everything that you've done in this community and how you have always been such, people talk about equity, inclusion, and it's something else. That's a shame I should know. But you've always been that way. You include everyone. You're equitable to everyone. You're fair to everyone. And for someone your age, just based on history, I know it had to be an evolution, but I think it's in your heart. That's who you are, and that is very rare. So that's why God has you here, to be a light and a beacon to show us how to live.
Oh my goodness, you've given me something to, the main thing that I stop and think, and I think, how is it that you are so fortunate that things seem to turn out for you? And I think, I guess just being natural and not, I don't know, that may be the answer. I really don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to my longevity. I have the answers to a lot of questions about people that have helped me along the way, and how I've sort of maybe forced myself into situations that I shouldn't
You're authentic.
have. But anyway,
You're authentic.
but thank you for your kind words,
Yes,
and maybe
ma'am.
I'll be around for a while. Who knows?
Yes, you were. You already been. You're not going anywhere.
Well,
You're here.
you should have something wise to say right now. Really
You said it. Stay organized and
focused and organized, correct?
Yes,
And keep
ma'am.
you correct.
And have people around you. Have confidence. Be nice to your children.
Always
Do what you feel like you can do in your heart. You can give. It's too many to name. If someone's taking notes, they're turning papers, they're flipping them on the back, and they're doing all that stuff.
Well, there's one of the things, and your proof of this is always spend your time with somebody that's smarter than you are.
Yes, ma'am. You can learn something.
I learned
with a soda. What's it again now?
Soda jerk.
Soda jerk. I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna
it
Google soda jerk when I go upstairs in my office.
It's the truth.
Yes, ma'am. I'll learn
It's
what it
the
is.
truth.
That's good.
Oh, man.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time today.
It's been fun.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate you. God bless you. And City of Douglasville, we celebrate phenomenal women in the city. I'm trying not to laugh, but sincerely, we really appreciate Miss Padgett, and thank you for spending time with us as we talk to women for Women's History Month and celebrate them. And as I said, the cherry on top is Miss Padgett. Please learn more about her. If you get this book by Miss Padgett, or just look, if you put her name in Wikipedia or something, the pages
It'll come up, and I am putting some in the museum.
Oh, great.
Yeah, they
great.
have them in the
So they
museum.
can go to the museum
Yeah.
and buy them. Okay, God bless you. Thank you so much.
Well,